everybody. Welcome to the Underwater Photography Show. As always, I am Matthew Sullivan.
And I'm Alex Mustard.
And before we get started today, I would just like to address, I do have my puppy Naia in the room with me. She is young and rambunctious. She's been down and out for a few days, so she has all of the energy now. So if you see me dip down or look over that way, that is to get her to stop doing whatever she's doing. Like right now, she's eating the plastic under my bed. But today we're going to talk about packing for dive travel with regards to underwater photography gear especially. So with that, Alex, I will let you take it away.
Well, actually, the first thing that I do when it comes to packing for a dive trip is I try and do it when my dog is out. Because if she sees me packing a couple of days before the trip, she's all sad for a couple of days. So I actually wait till Zeze goes out for a walk, and then I hurriedly pack get the suitcases out and put them in the other room, and then pack them out of sight of her. But that's just a tip for pet owners is try and hide your packing from your pets. I think it's a really good question because it's something that I get asked about time and time again is about packing the gear. And that's really because, people see me with a lot of gear, but actually no one's going to listen to me now. People see me traveling with a lot of gear, but are always incredibly shocked when they see how small my suitcases are. And I'm usually have probably the most gear of anyone on trips, but often the smallest and the lightest travel gear because of how well I've pared everything else down over time and I've gone through the whole system. So I will tell you what I do, which I've traveled with hundreds and hundreds of other underwater photographers and, lots of little ideas over the decades I've incorporated from them. But there's now nobody who I travel with who I would, copy what they do. I feel I've sort of got to the optimal point for the way I want to travel. There are a couple of other general things to address beforehand. The first is that travel rules vary a huge amount around the world, particularly in luggage allowance rules. And I know for certainly like a big difference between North America and Europe is a lot of the flights out of Europe are quite strict on hand or carry-on baggage allowances in Europe, whereas in the States, generally, if you can lift it, it's going on the plane, and people often travel with two large carry-on cases.
Is that with regards to the size of it or the weight or both in Europe?
It's very common on a lot of, say, internal flights in Asia and also a lot of long-haul flights out of Europe that we can have a 7 kilo, 14 pound maximum limit on carry-on luggage so that completely changes your packing philosophy if you have to adhere to that. So as a general rule, I would say to anyone, carry on as much as you possibly can, but just saying that is not, people go, oh yeah, I take my entire system in the carry-on. Well, yeah, I would do that too if I was always allowed to have that much carry-on luggage, but that's not the case on lots of flights. And what you don't want to have is a situation is turning up to an airport with all your gear crammed into a couple of carry-on cases, and then the airline tell you that there needs to be checked. And it's not properly packed because you pack differently for carry-on as for check baggage. And I had two friends on a Raja Ampat trip with me, flying with I won't mention the airline, but a Dubai-based airline. And when they got to the Emirates check-in desk, they didn't have that much hand luggage, but it was over the 7 kilos. And the airline made them check it in, made them pay excess baggage then for the extra luggage that they then had for checked in. And then the airline lost every single piece of their luggage for a Raja Ampat liveaboard. And they didn't get it back till they got home. So that's a worst case scenario, but it shows that, if you need to pack based on what you're going to travel with. And it's not a common sense test. It's a bureaucratic test. So you read the rules, you understand the rules of that particular airline, and you pack to those rules. And if and it can mean that, I'll often turn up to check in with more stuff than someone else, and they'll get charged excess baggage. They'll get, hassle, and I'll whistle straight through because of the fact that mine obeys the rules, however weird they are. It's, it's all going on the same plane, but it's about having it divided up in the ways that airline wants them divided up, without, some airlines, don't want you taking 2 check bags. It's got to all go in one. Another airline is fine with you having 2 check bags, but if one is too heavy, they get upset. And it's, purely bureaucratic, but it's important to understand those rules and plan accordingly. that all that experience down the years of a huge number of trips, always traveling with as much camera gear as I possibly can, has sort of tailored my approach. And I think I'm a little bit different from a lot of underwater photographers because I have far more gear than I could ever take on any trip. So I'm always having to decide carefully what I am taking and what I'm not taking. And I'm packing to that baggage allowance. And I've used the hand scales at home to make sure my bags are exactly where I want them to be, in the run up to the trip. And I know how much my bags are. So what I would say is that if you can get your luggage, get as much as possible in your carry-on, by all means take it. I have to, because of the amount of gear that I want to take, I have to prioritize my high value, high delicacy objects in carry-on. So my carry-on allowance is, my carry-on bags are normally full of housing, lenses, computers, and that sort of, and expensive viewfinders and optical things that I don't want in the hold. I rarely travel with enough to get by in my carry-on, which I think is different to a lot of people. But the reality is that I want to take world-class underwater photos on my trip. I don't want to just take some photos. And so I want my proper gear there, or I'm not interested, is kind of my approach. I have to say that that's also because flying out of Europe, we have a lot more direct flights to destinations, and we suffer a lot less with lost baggage than the Americans who come on my trips do. I run lots of trips. I have lots of people from around the world, and sadly, it's people who take connections through US hub airports that lose bags, much more so than on other routes. I think that European airports can be just as bad, but most Europeans don't need to take those connections. They tend to have a non-connecting flight out of Europe. And then I would say the big hub airports in the Middle East, in Asia, are very good at not losing your bags. So, once you're safely out of North America or Europe, you're fine. And I think the risk is on that. So, onto the bags. There's a photo of me I'm going to put on screen now, taken on my last trip, going to Raja Ampat. And it's a photo of me with my luggage for that trip. And just to go through that trip, I had full diving gear. I had full my Sony A1 housing system. I had 3 strobes with me. I had 2 FCPs with me because I was testing them, WWL, and I had a Matty Smith dome port. So that is, and macro gear as well. So that's probably more gear than most underwater photographers would travel with. Yet my luggage is relatively compact. And that's because I'm very careful with everything else that goes in there. So the first thing is I travel with 1 hard case and 1 soft case. The soft case is super lightweight. It's a big Mares dive bag. Got lots of space in it. Doesn't offer huge amounts of protection, but there's lots of things that don't need lots of protection. In fact, the Matty Smith dome port goes in there because as long as you protect it from being scratched, domes are actually incredibly strong. So it's always traveled in there and it's never had a problem being in the soft bag. But generally that bag is for dive gear, strobe arms, clamps, all that stuff that's not damageable by travel goes in the soft bag. And because it's in a soft bag, that soft bag is really light when it's empty. It doesn't have wheels, it doesn't have padding, it's just a bag and it's really tough, but it doesn't add weight. I also like, as you see in the picture, that I can move with all my gear. I don't need a luggage trolley at an airport. Now, I'll always use a luggage trolley if there is one, but lots of times you arrive at an airport and there isn't a luggage trolley, and people who turn up with 2 great big, hard cases, and they can't move. And, it just makes the whole travel thing easier if you can move. So I can sling my backpack over my back. I've then got 1 wheelie hard case for check-in, 1 wheelie hard case for carry-on. And that gets me through. One of the reasons my baggage can be light is I've also, over time, worked out how to get my dive gear a lot lighter. And there are a few things you can do. This trip was a liverboard trip. So I do most of my dive trips either from liverboard or from dive boat. And on those trips, I never take boots and fins. I wear foot fins. Now, people always say to me, foot fins, they always hurt my feet. If they're new, they'll hurt your feet. But once you've done 4 or 5 dives in them, they're never going to hurt your feet again. They mold to your shape of your foot, and they're absolutely fine. Now, I know not everyone can get on with them, but the number of people I've converted down the years on foot fins, and the weight saving of a pair of lightweight foot fins, and the saving of those over a pair of conventional fins and boots, which by the end of the trip you'll never get dry and will weigh even more, is massive. You can also save a lot of weight on lightweight BCDs. You don't need a hardcore cold water BCD for tropical diving, and you can save a lot on travel regulators. And across all of those 3 items, you can really halve the weight of your dive gear, and that makes a massive difference in terms of your travel weight overall as a diver. So the lightweight dive bag, lightweight fins, no boots, lightweight BC saves a little bit, lightweight reg saves quite a decent chunk as well. Don't obviously have anything on there that you don't need. So if you're a cold water diver, don't take your extra inflation hose. You know, if you've got a super heavyweight built-in console computer, maybe consider getting a lightweight watch computer. All those things will save you on trips. And I mention all of that because I think people always go, oh, how do you travel with all the gear? That's a massive part of it, is getting the dive gear weight down.
Yeah, that's a good point, especially with the full foot fins, because I don't use them, and honestly never really thought about using them just because
you do a lot of shore diving though. I wouldn't necessarily, but for travel, it really makes a difference. And you'll see, pictures of me. There's loads and loads of pictures of me underwater, and you'll see me for years and years and years diving in foot fins, and they're complete. I've done thousands and thousands and thousands of dives in them, and it's saved weight on all those trips. Over to the camera gear where the hard case is. So I avoid using hard cases that look like they've got something expensive inside. So I use normal hard shell but lightweight luggage. And I want to kind of look like a tourist. I don't want to be advertising the fact that I've got expensive dive gear. It just can attract the wrong people, whether it's a customs official in certain countries around the world looking for a backhander, or whether it's a thief looking for something expensive in the luggage. So my gear, the dive bag looks like diving equipment to some degree, but diving equipment is not worth the world, and I don't think a lot of diving gear gets nicked. But the other bag just looks like a normal travel suitcase. Mine's got a few more stickers on it from airports than the average one, but it doesn't look like it's got anything expensive inside it. And then what I do with that travel case is I have a little bit of padding that I've put into it in terms of foam, but everything is individually wrapped inside. So you can see that my travel case is actually quite a small one. It's the red one down on the floor in front of me, if I bring that picture back up. And the reason I've got that, it's the smaller end of those hard case in terms of the ranges that the companies offer. And the reason I go for the smaller one is that it gets its strength from being full. And if you get the big one, the problem is if you fill it up with stuff, it's actually too heavy. It becomes too heavy. So what I like about that one is I can absolutely fill it with camera gear, use, the bubble wrap and a few clothes for padding, and it stays under that 50-pound limit, that 23-kilo limit that so many airlines have. And that's why I like the smaller bag, is that I can get everything in it. So I have the big bag for any big items, fins and strobe arms and that sort of thing, and then the small bag for everything else. And everything, and I'll show you a picture of the inside of it. This is how it was packed coming back from that same Raja Ampat trip. I took a picture for the show. And what you can see is on the right side of the frame, you've got in there, I'm using Amazon bags as bubble wrap. There's 3 Amazon bags on the bottom right-hand corner. Those have got 3 retrostrobes in. I've then got some more bags with ports in. The square black box at the top right, that's a Nauticam WWL. Then in the other half of the case, in the central area at the bottom, that's the FCP, one FCP wrapped up there. And then also down in the other half, there are some other accessories. There's chargers, batteries, another couple of ports, diffusers. There's my dive computers in a bag there. And all individually wrapped, so they get their protection from their individual bubble wrap as opposed from having separate things in the case. And it's very space efficient. It's very strong. I really have had no problems traveling like this. Never had anything damaged. And, most photographers, this suitcase has done more dive trips than, 99% of underwater photographers ever will. So as a system, it works really, really well. This particular brand of case, it splits down the middle to open. That allows me, I think, because of the depth of the case, it works quite well. Most underwater photography items fit neatly into each half. But when it comes to my hand luggage case, which I'm going to show you now, I'll just go back to the main picture and pull that up on the screen in front of our ugly faces again. My hand luggage case, which is on the other side, nice dark color, so it doesn't look big, even though it is quite big. for the hand luggage case. And that case there is a canvas case. It's just a single compartment roll-on carry case at the maximum size allowed. And that one doesn't have a central zip. The zipper is at the top. So it's just got a flip-off lid, as it were. And that maximizes the space inside it because it's a narrower bag than the whole bag. And then that bag there has got plenty of space. This is the inside of it. There's my housing there on the left-hand side, in bubble wrap at the bottom. And then above that, in the Nauticam neoprene tubes, are lenses. I actually usually keep those in a bag inside the bag, just a soft canvas bag inside, just to keep them together. There's also a viewfinder in there. There's the top part of the EMWL in there because that's expensive. The bubble wrap at the other end of the case is another lens. It's actually the Nikonos lens because I didn't have it. I got that particular trip. It got delivered to me when I was there, so it didn't have a nice bag for itself. And then there's a grey bag there which has got lithium batteries in, just a spare camera battery, my GoPro battery, that sort of thing, torch batteries. So, and that's my carry-on. But you can see that it's a very lightweight bag. It doesn't have any additional padding in. That bag's traveling with me, so it doesn't need any more padding than that to protect the items. And that saves a lot of space and a lot of, additional bulk and weight by not having that padding. So I don't really have any dedicated padding and everything. And then just finally, if I go back to the picture of me standing carrying my bag, you'll see that I've got quite a large laptop briefcase, which slots on top of that roll-on carrying bag as a sort of personal item second bag. And that one I can actually fit the housing in if I need to. If I'm taking two housings on a trip, I could actually have a second housing in there, along with my laptop, along with all my other stuff that I need generally on the flight is what I sort of keep in there. And then the other carry-on is kind of locked away on the flight. It's in the overhead locker. I never open it. No one ever sees what's in it. And I tend to keep it locked on the flights as well, just with its combination lock. And that allows me to get really a large amount of stuff there. But it comes from that approach. There aren't any clothes in these pictures because I tend to use whatever clothes I'm taking as padding. And most of the clothes and wash bag and things go into the larger dive bag in that setup. So hopefully that gives people plenty of food for thought and certainly an approach to how I do it, having spent, a great many years perfecting that approach. But yeah, the key things, lightweight baggage that doesn't attract attention, lightweight dive gear that then doesn't take the baggage up. Use bubble wrap rather than padding. Be aware that bubble wrap doesn't last forever. It will lose its cushioning effect over time. So whenever anyone sends me something, if it's a nice piece of bubble wrap, it goes into my bubble wrap storage for when I next need it, and the old pieces get thrown away and recycled over time. And then not using padding, using padded cases, but actually doing it that way. And I find that works really well for me.
One question for you that I've gotten before, so I'll ask it to you. Do you travel with your camera in the housing?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I have always done that from a space saving point of view as much as anything. That's just wasted spaces. Now, sometimes we've had flights where we have very strict hand luggage limits. At various times, some of the flights we take to the Red Sea have been ridiculously tiny baggage hand. It's like a small handbag each, and that's it.
Yeah.
And in those situations, my housing has to go in the hold. And when my housing goes in the hold, I then pack the inside with underpants and things like that, and I take the camera out and carry the camera in the hand luggage. But generally I always travel with my camera in the housing. I take the viewfinder off. Always take the viewfinders off the back because that's a potential damage point, and it obviously makes a big difference to the size of it as well.
For sure. Well, I learned a couple things there. Maybe I'll have to go get some full foot fins and ditch the dive boots for travel. But if that's all you've got on that, I think that's a good place to wrap up. Again, guys, I apologize for Naia's distractions, but it won't be the last time. And with that, we'll see you guys in the next one.